right, it's time. The Eighth Amendment to the United States Constitution: no cruel or unusual punishments. Let's take a look at the text. The Eighth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution reads, excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. All right, so the beginning here is pretty self-explanatory. Excessive bail shall not be required. Look, this kind of comes down to common sense a little bit. Excessive bail. What is bail? Bail is posted by a defendant, to get out of jail, but to also ensure that that defendant returns, for their trial. So excessive bail, that might be in the eye of the beholder. Now, if you're a multi-million-dollar celebrity or a multi-million-dollar banker and you've been accused of a pretty serious, maybe white-collar crime, they might set your bail at $1 million because you can afford that. Now, if you are, a average middle-class or lower-class worker and you have been accused of a pretty minor crime, that bail might be a couple $1,000s, maybe a little bit more, depending on the crime. I mean, like, look, if you stole something of pretty low value, they're not going to set your bail at $3 million. That would be excessive. But if you're a banker and you've defrauded people of tens of millions of dollars, they might set your bail at millions of dollars. And so you got to apply this based on the situation, based on the person that you're dealing with. Excessive fines imposed. Okay, so an excessive fine could be like you're going to fine somebody $10 million for speeding. I mean, obviously that's not going to happen. So you can't have excessive fines. They didn't want a situation where, a court ruled that someone had to pay this exorbitant amount of money for a crime that was very, very minor. They wanted to make sure that fines were based on, what a jury or a judge would find. Another thing that factors into bail is what the perceived evil is of the crime. So I've been describing here crimes mostly dealing with money or theft. But if someone's accused of a crime that's extremely heinous, like they tortured somebody, please don't torture somebody. If they are accused of murder, something really bad, you're gonna set that bail extremely high. Now, again, if someone just steals a little bit of money from a store, you're not going to set the bail as high as something where the perceived evil is extremely high. That's going to result in high bail. Excessive fines. Now, this has to do with whether or not you've had due process. So let's say there's an individual who's become sick and it's their belief that was due to fertilizer or chemicals in a nearby field. They have a trial and the jury rules that this person is entitled to tens of millions of dollars. Some people might think that that's too much money. Other people might think it's not enough money. But the thing is, there has been due process. And so if the jury and the judge ruled that the individual was entitled to that money, that's the case then. They're entitled to that money. Now, what isn't due process is if legislators pass a law that say, they're going to fine an individual or a company, and that individual or that company has not been allowed to defend themselves in court, because maybe they're not guilty of whatever that law is alleging. And so that would be seen as an excessive fine. You have to have a chance for due process, and then the amount of that fine can be defined. And lastly, we get to no cruel and unusual punishment, which is easily the most famous part of the Eighth Amendment. No cruel and unusual punishments will be inflicted. Now, if you're watching this and you live in the United States, or even if you don't live in the United States, but you're familiar with the USA, you know that we don't chop people's hands off for theft. That would be seen as a cruel and an unusual punishment. So, how do we decide what is a cruel and unusual punishment? Well, there's a very famous case from the U.S. Supreme Court that happened in 1972, and that's called the Furman versus Georgia case. And in that case, they ruled that punishments cannot be arbitrary, punishments cannot degrade human dignity, and punishments must be acceptable to modern society. And why this case is so famous is that that case ruled that the death penalty violated this test. The case ruled that the death penalty is unusually severe and degrading to human dignity. The case ruled that the death penalty is applied with discrimination. So Furman versus Georgia actually overturned every single U.S. state's death penalty statute. It commuted the sentences of death row inmates all across the United States. Very famously, Charles Manson was one of those people. And yeah, like I said, it got rid of the death penalty in this country for 4 years. But then there was another case, Gregg versus Georgia. And in that case, the court reversed themselves. And then they allowed the death penalty. But it was during the mid-1970s that numerous states who previously had had the death penalty got rid of it during this time because of the controversy from that original Furman versus Georgia case and how the court ruled on the death penalty itself. So I don't want to make this video a debate on the death penalty. You know, some people to this day believe that the death penalty violates the Eighth Amendment, and others believe that it does not. If you want to have that debate, you can hit us up in the comments and let us know your thoughts. But I'm just giving you the straight history on this, and that's where, with the Eighth Amendment, the death penalty has come up. So hopefully this video helped you out. That's the Eighth Amendment simplified from the United States Constitution. Help me out by subscribing to this channel. I would really, really appreciate that. And you can hit that like button as well. That really helps me out here on the YouTube algorithm. I would appreciate it. We'll see you all next time.